Welcome, everyone. So it's so great to see so many faces online and in person in the room. I'm Cynthia Minkovitz, and I have the honor of chairing the Department of Population, Family, and Reproductive Health. Yay, department. And, you know, as you already know from orientation, for those who are new, and certainly our continuing students and learners know, the things that connect us are population and life course. So the themes that will be part of our noon seminar are in fact those things. So over the course of the academic year, for 2 to 3 Wednesdays every month, we will come together as a department, a hybrid. So if you're on campus, we'd love to see you in person. If you want to join by Zoom, we welcome you joining that way as well. And you'll hear really exciting things about work that's going on in our field. So things that happen in public health practice, things that happen in advocacy, things that happen in research. We rotate who leads noon seminar because we really want to give you a chance to have exposure to the breadth of the department. So each of you has, yes, the microphone. It says my speaker. Thank you for letting me know you can't hear. The speakers should be on in the ceiling, but apparently they're not. So we're just giving a brief overview to noon seminar. So over the course of the academic year, for 2 to 3 sessions per month, we'll have speakers come in. Some of them will be faculty or leaders who are here in the school. Some of them will be external speakers. And we rotate the responsibility for who invites the speakers to give you some exposure to the breadth of our department. So I encourage you not only come to the sessions that directly align to your areas of interest, but come to others because you'll learn about really exciting application, you'll learn about translation, you'll learn about interesting methods, even if the content may not be exactly in the area that you think you're focused on. And who knows, I know there's some in this room whose interests evolved over the course of the time in their academic program. And so that may happen to you as well. And it's all part of the journey and part of the learning. One of the things that our colleague Bob Blum started probably about 8 years ago was for the first 2 noon seminars to do something a little bit different. So you're already meeting faculty in your coursework, you're seeing them in the hallways, you may be already stopping by to get to know folks who may be your advisors. But you might want to know a little bit more about like what makes faculty tick, what makes you choose the path in public health that you choose. And so for today, we're going to start with stories of our faculty. And so you're going to hear short stories from some of our faculty today and some more next week to just sort of tell you a little bit about themselves, something that you wouldn't necessarily see on their bio page, but they're probably stories that you'll remember over time. Before we get started for today, there is one person I definitely need to acknowledge, who is Sylvia Thomas, who wonderfully works and staffs the front office. She's amazing. So if you haven't met her, stop by the front office, say hello, introduce yourself. And she helps coordinate many things in the department, but especially our noon seminars. So we're very appreciative. So thank you. And I also want to make a couple of other reminders. So as many of you know, we have sort of an outing for the department, which is an Orioles game on September 29th in Camden Yards. For those of you that are in Baltimore for the first time, even if you're not a baseball fan, Camden Yards is really impressive. It's totally fun. You're welcome to come by yourself. You're welcome to invite a guest if you'd like. We're going to send out a reminder. Gilbert's going to send it out to students today if you haven't already gotten it. We'd like for as many folks who want to come to be able to join us. And we did this last year. It was great. I sat next to Emmy Hughes, and Emmy taught me all about baseball. So if you want to know anything about the intimate stories of the baseball players who are on our Baltimore team, sit next to Emmy. She tried explaining the scoring to me too and all the details, and I wasn't so good on that end, but she is a wealth of baseball knowledge. So I highly encourage, but it is a really fun event. So if you're at all interested, please respond online. We still have some tickets left, and we want to make sure those who want to come can join us. What's also really special about our noon seminar is the room that we're in. So you may think of it as room 2030, but I think of it as Page Hall, which celebrates our wonderful Dr. David Page, who is really one of the fathers, the parents of the Women, Infants, and Children Supplemental Food Program. So you'll hear more about that over the course of the year. But we're really honored, David, to be in a space with your name, a link to it. So for me, it makes a noon seminar extra special. So I wanted to make sure folks were aware of that. So without further ado, we'll get started with some of our stories. So I'm going to invite Dr. Michele Decker to come say hello, and we'll definitely use the mic. If folks online at any point can't hear, please add a note to the chat. Wow, welcome everyone. This is so exciting. I'm Michele Decker. I am thrilled to be kicking off our Stories of the Faculty. I got a couple props with me today, and I'm going to give you a quick introduction, and my story is really about kind of what motivates me to be here every day. And many of those motivating factors are right here in this room. So I'm Michele Decker. I've been on faculty here for about 13 years, hard to believe. And I'm a professor here in the department in the women's concentration area. And am also now the founding director. I'm so excited about this. We now have a new center for global women's health and gender equity that is just launching this academic year. So really excited. And you can look forward to getting some of our seminar speakers through this seminar and elsewhere as well. So a little bit about me. How did I get here, and how did I get delighted to be here every day? I was a women's studies major in college and a health communications major in college, and got really interested in the many threats and disparities that we see for women around the world and in different local environments. I started volunteering as a sexual violence victim advocate, taking hotline calls, going to emergency departments, supporting victims as they were making police statements, going through forensic exams. And I just started asking myself, how do we know that what we're doing makes a difference? And how do we know that our prevention programming is really effective? Because I was seeing the aftermath of sexual violence and other hazards, other health hazards for women. And I really wanted to know about the data. And I said to myself, I really like this volunteer work, but I need a little bit more. And I went on to get some training in my MPH, and I wound up in state and local health departments, also doing monitoring and technical support and evaluation, really important core functions in public health, right? And then was delighted to have an opportunity to go on for doctoral training to really get a higher level of methods to answer those questions. What about the data? What about these metrics? How do we know that what we're doing is impactful on the outcomes that we want to see and the outcomes that our communities want to see? And so that's been really a motivating force for me, and is one of the things that gets me excited about showing up here every day, working with our community partners, translating our evidence to policy audiences and to stakeholders, and also training students on how do we make sense? How do we use the most rigorous methods to study, whether it's epi work, observational, or evaluation work, to really know and add rigor to some of the most challenging situations that people may face in their childhoods, in their families, in their relationships, and in their lives. So it's been a big motivating force for me, and one that I really wanted to highlight today, because I think we all know data's under scrutiny these days. And so we are ambassadors of the evidence base to advance women's health. And that's something that really brings me to this campus every day and really fires me up. And my last little prop here, I'm looking around for Christy Battelle, but she may be online. We've been doing these seminars, these stories for a little while, and I often close mine or open mine with living the dream. So when I talk about being here as a faculty member, as a teacher, as an educator, an advisor, and a mentor, I usually tell people I'm living the dream. Well, I presented that at a faculty story a couple of years ago, and a few days later, I got a knock on my door, and Christy Battelle showed up with this lovely little placard that says, living the dream. So when you see me in the hall, give me a high five, stop me, say hello, and just know that I'm living the dream, and so are you. Thanks. I do love the props. I think you're setting a new trend. I'm going to invite Dr. Astha Ramaiya to join us online.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. And unfortunately, I'm not able to show you props, but I'm hoping my story is motivating enough and moving enough that you will be able to reach out to me and get in touch with me if there is, if that is something you're interested in. So my first two beliefs as a public health professional are: one, you should do something that you're passionate about, and two, you should walk the talk. So my passion for public health and social justice started from the streets of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. As a child, I would go to the hospital where my father worked and realized that life was not equal, nor was it fair. I went into my undergrad hoping to be a doctor, like a lot of South Asian people I know, but realized that I wanted to make a difference at the population level. So during my third year during my undergrad, I volunteered with WHO in Tanzania to evaluate a condom uptake program amongst commercial sex trade workers who were mostly adolescents. Interviewing them and conducting the survey put into perspective that condom use was not an individual decision and rather a factor of social determinants of health. My master's and doctorate education solidified this thinking, and currently my research focuses on individual, family, as well as community factors as part of the gendered system, which affects violence during adolescence and hopefully eventually into adulthood. I have seen how power imbalances in the household and relationships leads to different forms of violence, as well as resilient factors which allow coping as well as flourishing. Living and walking my research became a challenge when I gave birth 5.5 years ago. As a mother, I tend to get impatient and tired of answering questions that my child asks. The level of curiosity and repetition when asked for the 50th time, why do tsunamis happen, or why planes fail midair, can be a source of irritation when I have other things on my mind. But I have taught him that he should keep me a check when my tone changes. Now, when I do get irritated, he asks me to change my tone and talk properly. So both these beliefs are based on a few lessons that I have learned. One, health is a human right. Two, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Three, risk and protective factors from in vitro all the way to adulthood all determine individual health outcomes, and every individual piece of work done to reduce inequities collectively makes a large change. Four, we all play a part in creating the change we want, but we have to start with ourselves first. And five, everyone is equal. So, if at any point you are interested in the work I do, please feel free to reach out to me. I am remote, so I am available over the net, but I do come in maybe once every couple of months. So I would love to get in touch with you and talk to you more if this is something you're interested in.
Thanks so much, Astha. I'm not sure if I'll remember more all the great lessons or the fact that you told your 5.5-year-old change your tone, even something that they could tell you. So I'll check in with you on that in the next couple of months and see how that's going. I'm going to welcome Dr. Alison Gemmill to join us online.
Great. So hi, everybody. I love these sessions, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is a story I think I told a few years ago, and it's just a story about my journey. And there's a few lessons I think that I want to share as well from that. But like many other people in this room, and like Astha said, I thought I wanted to be a doctor for the longest part of my life. And I went to undergrad at UCLA, took those pre-med courses, and actually had my first experience with a serious illness. And I realized, I don't know if I want to do this doctor thing. Bounced around from major to major, figuring out what I was going to do. I was a history major at one point. And my roommate at the time was majoring in geography. And I said, huh, that's interesting. So I ended up studying geography for my undergrad. Turns out that I did a little bit of demography, which is what I ended up doing, of course, later on in my career. And so then after I graduated, I was still kind of lost, not sure what I wanted to do. And I wanted to say that at the time, people could not major in public health or minor in public health. Public health was only something that you did in graduate school. So I had little exposure. But, you know, I'm bouncing around, figuring out jobs, and I am from California, and I always wanted to move to New York City. So one of the biggest risks that I ever took in my life was moving to New York City with no job, knowing only one person, but just knowing that I wanted to work in a nonprofit and maybe do research. And after bouncing around from different temp jobs, I finally landed a job at the Guttmacher Institute, which is where I worked as a research assistant. And I just immediately fell in love with what I did. One of the things that I was in charge of was managing the library, and I got to learn about all the different papers people were writing in the field, who the authors were, et cetera. And I just knew I had found a home. So I went back to school. I did my MPH first, and then I realized I'm going to go all the way. And I finally started my PhD program when I was about 30. So my first lesson is it's okay to take a little winding road, or take the winding road. And also it's okay to be a late bloomer. I am very much a late bloomer. And then lastly, I just want to say that because I took this very winding road, and I've just met so many people along the way. And I just want to highlight one of these people who is now a faculty member at Hopkins too, Suzanne Bell. We met during our MPH at Berkeley. So yeah, hi. So get to know your colleagues, your fellow students, because they might become lifelong colleagues and definitely lifelong friends. So enjoy your program. I'm looking forward to getting to know you, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks so much, Alison. Sally Safi here. Yep. We'll get to hear stories about you that people just didn't hear about at orientation. It's great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sally. Nice to see you all again. Today, I'm going to talk about how I first came to the department as an MSPH student back in 2012 and the reasons that I'm still here. After college, I decided to do the Peace Corps. So I was in Rwanda as a health volunteer for a couple of years. And kind of like Alison was just alluding to, I don't remember the exact moment that I discovered public health, but it was at some point while I was in the Peace Corps. And I was so excited to find public health because it seemed like a great way to have a very practical and impactful career where I could put into practice my commitment to social justice, and by working on issues related to my passion for reproductive health, reproductive rights, and reproductive justice, which is something I would discover here. While I was in the Peace Corps, I had a lot of time. So I discovered public health. I decided I wanted to get a master's, and I very thoroughly researched different master's programs and different schools that I wanted to apply to when I came back. And so I applied to a bunch of places, and eventually I narrowed it down to Hopkins and Berkeley. And so in my mind, I had a choice to go to like sunny California. I pictured the school as being very friendly. And then I also imagined my other choice to be kind of a cold, concrete, and pretentious school here in Baltimore. But ultimately, I did decide to come here because it is, after all, the #1 school of public health. And I could be closer to my friends and family on the East Coast, who I missed very much in the Peace Corps. But I could not have been more wrong in my assumptions about Hopkins. I didn't have any trouble making friends here or finding my people. On my second day of class, I sat down in Epi Lab with my group of 3 other people. And little did I know that across the table was the person I would eventually marry. I have a picture of myself and fellow students at the department-sponsored Orioles game that took place that September that I moved here. And many of the people in that picture came to my wedding. So come to the O's game on September 29th. I made so many friends in my Pop Fam cohort, including a close friend who was my doula when I gave birth to my older daughter. Another friend in my cohort left Baltimore for a bit, but we had opportunities while she was gone to see each other in Cote d'Ivoire and in Kigali. And now she's back here with 2 kids who are about the same age as my kids. We hang out all the time. She came to my house a couple of days before I had my second daughter with like tubs full of ice cream that we ate on my porch. And so here, while I was here, in addition to making lifelong friends, I had moments, I remember moments of awe, meeting incredibly accomplished yet humble people like David Page and Henry Mosley. I had the opportunity to have lunch with them at faculty student brown bag lunches. So make sure you participate in those. The first will be September 27th. Look out for an email. And now as the Director of Graduate Studies in the department, one of the most exciting parts of my jobs, is being heavily involved in the admissions process for our programs and reviewing student applications. So I now have moments of awe reviewing those applications, getting so excited about the students who are coming to our programs, who have already accomplished so much and who I know will accomplish tremendous things while you're here and after you leave. And I think you've gotten the sense from others who have already spoken today that faculty and staff are really eager to be a part of your student journey, and we're really, truly happy that you decided to join us. So my 2 takeaways are that number 1, you belong here, we want you here, and we're really excited that you have joined us. It's not always going to be smooth sailing, so please reach out if you need help, but I do think that your time here will be exciting. And then number 2, find your people. I really believe that they are here for every person, whether they're in the department, somewhere else here at Hopkins, or somewhere else in Baltimore. I had another cohort mate in my master's program who was from California, and she, I remember the moment that she proclaimed that Baltimore is the least pretentious city that she had ever been to. So that helped validate my choice of coming here. Yeah, I think that you all have made the right decision to come here as well. And so while you're here, you never know if the person that you're sitting across from could be your future life partner, your future doula, or a friend who brings over ice cream. So enjoy.
So now I'm going to have to find out with Sally afterward, who was the doula who was sitting across from her? Because we have a lot that have come through our program. So thank you. I'm going to invite up Dr. Charvonne Holliday-Nworu.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charvonne Holliday-Nworu. I am an assistant professor in the department where I have the pleasure of working on issues such as intimate partner violence, working with both survivors of violence as well as people who cause harm in their intimate relationships. And I want to share a quick quote that really summarizes what brings me here every day. And it's really a mix of passion and ego, if I'm honest. So the quote is by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed individuals can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And so my mom and I can go back and forth about this all the time because her perspective is you can't change the world, but I believe that we can. And so maybe there are some flaws in this quote, but what brings me here is that knowing that the work that we do, as Michele was mentioning, Dr. Decker was mentioning, the data that we collect, the interventions that we create really does make an influence. Similar to some of the other stories that were shared, I also was in pursuit of medicine at first, but I wanted to make an impact at the population level. I had started out in my pursuit of medicine doing breast cancer research. So I was extracting DNA and RNA from blood. I was at a bench. And it wasn't really fun. My coworker said I wasn't really engaging. And, I was kind of grumpy. Community was really my focus. I loved being out in the community. And so it took me a while to find my path. At first, I was doing bullying prevention at the school-based level. Then I was doing a nutrition-based program for youth in the community. So community was center. When I was doing breast cancer research, racial and ethnic disparities was central. I found public health similar to other people. I didn't quite know what it was as a first-generation college student, but I knew it was kind of related to medicine, and I knew I could kind of be in the community too at the same time, so I pursued it. Loved my master's so much that I went on to get a PhD in public health, and I still was kind of finding my way. Some of you might be at the point where you say you're interested in a lot of things. At that time, I was really interested in men's health. I was interested in breastfeeding. I was still interested in school-based bullying, but I found my passion that's been a common thread in my research, and that is intimate partner homicide. And that's what brings me to work every day. It's knowing that I might be able to prevent violence in a home, or reduce the amount of violence that a child might be experiencing as they're growing up, or knowing that maybe there's a hotline that we are able to create using data that people who are at risk of causing harm can call into. And I'll just wrap up. I said to Michele, my stories are always sad. I don't want it to be a sad story, but maybe hopefully it's an empowering story. Right before the pandemic happened, we were doing data collection, and I had the opportunity to interview a research participant, which is one of the things that I really enjoy, being in the community. And she shared that she had come to the States, for an arranged marriage. And long story short, her husband was very, very abusive, burning her with cigarettes, very, very traumatic, very, very abusive, to the point that she wanted to die by suicide. But she said that before she did, she wanted to make sure that all of her paperwork was in order, her passport, all of her documents. And she found the number to the local domestic violence shelter, domestic violence agency, House of Ruth, Maryland. And so she called them, the hotline, similar hotline that Michele worked as a student. And they were able to talk to her and ask her favorite color, ask her what she had for lunch, anything to keep her on the phone, sent a car for her, picked her up, took her to shelter, and she lived to be able to tell us her story. They were able to find housing for her. And so these are the things that bring me here, knowing that the work that we do every day here at the School of Public Health can impact a woman like her. And so I believe that all of us in this room, we're all like-minded people in the way that we're committed to changing the world. So I'm so excited to serve as your advisor, your mentor, and your collaborator, your colleague. So welcome, and I look forward to meeting you.
You're hearing a lot of shared themes. So it is okay if you don't know exactly what you want to do. Our job is to help you find your passion and acquire skills to go out and conquer the world and make a difference. So you're going to have lots of wonderful role models in the department, not only among the faculty, but among your peers, as you're hearing from our stories. So I'm going to invite up Dr. Farah Qureshi next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farah Qureshi. I'm an assistant professor in the department, relatively newly minted. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary here in July, but not new to the department. So I did my master's here many, many years ago. And I also am a Baltimore native. So, let's go O's. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the Orioles game. So I am a social epidemiologist by training, which means that I use large-scale data to understand how social inequality manifests as inequitably distributed health and disease across the population. And so in particular, I study the early life origins of cardiovascular disease with a focus on psychosocial processes by which young people's social environments get under the skin and shape their physiology. And while I'd love to talk more about that today, that's actually not at all what I'm going to talk about. I've actually been thinking all morning about what I wanted to share with you. And I've struggled a lot because I've gone through a lot of personal shifts in the past couple of years that I think really speak to the spirit of this department. Most notably, I became a mom. And I think that a lot of the issues and the topics that people study have become an acute part of my life, for better or for worse. And so just to name a few of these things, I experienced a traumatic birth. I experienced postpartum depression. I struggled tremendously with the transition between from being a really fiercely independent 35-year-old woman to being or feeling shackled within the gender norms of our society, even in a marriage that is quite equitable and with a partner who does not subscribe to those views at all. Just the way that society is set up made that transition to motherhood incredibly difficult, I think, especially being somewhat older. But funny enough, that's also not what I'm going to talk about today, because I think that, these are all topics that are relevant to folks in this room. But what I wanted to talk about today is something that I experienced and felt throughout the course of my academic journey. And I would say some of you may also kind of resonate with this, but it's this idea of not necessarily seeing myself reflected in the spaces that I occupy professionally, whether that is, my people, my background, my lived experiences, and how difficult that can be to navigate, and sometimes how lonely it can be. There are many aspects to my identity, some of which you see on the color of my skin or the sound of my name, many of which you don't, many of which are marginalized in society, and I would say all of which are at odds with the status quo in public health and in academia overall. So I am a woman of color. I am a child of immigrants. I am a practicing Muslim. I come from a very large and very involved family that perhaps is non-traditional to some that I've encountered who find it shocking that I'm one of 6 kids born to the same 2 parents. I have in-laws that span various ethnicities, various religious groups, and perhaps most importantly, I'm married to a Black man in America and have a daughter who will grow up to be a Black Muslim woman of South Asian descent in an inherently, or maybe often, I would say, racist, xenophobic, Islamophobic, misogynistic society. And so those are the lenses, those aspects of my identity are what I carry with me every day when I enter this building. They're the lenses through which I see everything that we do here. And whether it be the research that we conduct, the questions that we deem necessary to answer through our research, the mentorship that we provide you guys, our teaching, it's really infiltrated its way into everything that I do. And so I'll be the first person to tell you that even in the face of these challenges, I've come to this work from a place of privilege that has really buffered me from true hardship. And I'm really grateful for that. It's allowed me to succeed even in the face of adversity. And I'm sure that many of you that resonates with many of you. But this privilege isn't afforded to everyone. And so I see my duty within this institution and within this field to hopefully give a voice to those groups who may not have a seat at the table yet. When I get to that point where I have a little bit more sway, creating those seats at the table. And though it may be challenging and uncomfortable to navigate systems that weren't created for you, and that were not created to serve everyone in society, I think those of you who may feel similarly to me in some way or another will find that we have a special duty to speak truth to power in these spaces. And that can take place in the classroom as you engage with your coursework. That can take place outside in the real world when you apply the skills and the knowledge that you acquire here to serve your communities. Or it can, for those of you who plan to stay in academia, it can take the shape of the future research agenda that you hope to pursue in your career. So finding ways to channel that discomfort of feeling unseen or unheard into something productive, I think is a constant battle, but the more that we struggle with it openly and are transparent about it, we can make this place a better place than it was when we arrived here. So the challenge that I want to issue you all as we start the new year is to embrace all the aspects of your identity that make you who you are and bring them into this building every single day. Stand in them, call on them as you debate the merits of the scholarly work that you read in class. Use them to challenge the status quo and embrace the discomfort of it, because I think bringing our authentic selves to this work is the first step to making real lasting change in these systems. So we're so excited to have you. I'm really excited to get to know you all. And I hope you have a great start of the year.
Well, if you don't already want to collaborate and partner with everyone you've heard from, just wait, there's more. So I'm going to invite Tamar Mendelson up to say hello.
Hello, everyone. My foot just fell asleep, so I feel like I had a dramatic limping walk up to the podium, but that's not usually the way I walk. Okay. So it's exciting to be with you all today. And I want to share with you a little bit about my long and nonlinear journey, and really resonated with what Alison was saying about being a late bloomer and not hearing about public health until later, because I feel like I might get some sort of prize in how late it took me to learn what public health was. So I did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I remember near the end of college, I started to get nervous about this because it seemed like everyone else had a really good plan. And I went to the guidance counselor and I said, I don't know what I want to do. And he said, take these questionnaires. So I took these 2 long questionnaires and then I came back like, here they are. And he was like, oh, they're just tools to help you. Like they didn't help me figure out, I already knew what I put on there. So I said, well, I really like literature. So I'm thinking maybe I should go into book publishing. And I remember this guy, his name was Mr. Crut. He said, you can send out 1,000 resumes a week and you won't get a job in book publishing. So it's really, I was devastated. I went back to the room like, well, the one idea I had, Mr. Crutz said I can send out 1,000 resumes a week and I won't get a job. So this kind of like got me, my rebellious side was like, I'm gonna get a job in book publishing. So I like looked at the spine of every book I had. I like called, so I got a job in book publishing. So then I got there and I realized, well, I may love reading fine literature. I was at Viking Penguin, but the classics don't need editing. They're kind of done. And a lot of the other stuff was very marketing driven and they weren't even really supportive of the writers. Like I had an editor boss who would like sneak out the back entrance when the writers came in because she thought they were annoying. So anyway, I just really, I felt like I really missed, or wanted in some way to help reduce human suffering and had always had an interest in sort of people's emotional experiences. And that's probably what drew me to literature. And so I had this epiphany, clinical psychology, this is it. So, did all the things, got into a PhD program and, really the focus was on sort of what is it within an individual and their personality and their thought patterns that can make them depressed or anxious. I went to internship in San Francisco at UCSF and was working at a public sector hospital there. And I realized that my training was completely inadequate to handle the kinds of issues folks were dealing with. So I mean, a day that particularly stands out is when a man who was experiencing homelessness couldn't get his cart into the elevator to get into the clinic. And I mean, literally this space, this approach did not fit for him. He couldn't even access that. And the amount of suffering, trauma, and other adversities that people were experiencing was really intense. And my training in sort of identifying dysfunctional thought patterns seemed not only inadequate, but, offensive. So at that point I was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like I did this whole PhD and now, but I was really fortunate to have a mentor there who was working at that time. This was at the forefront of, people weren't talking about prevention in clinical psychology, but he was doing prevention. He was working with Latinx moms in particular. And so I started to learn about social determinants of mental health and about prevention and about culturally sensitive strategies of engaging people upstream before they may have the kinds of profound mental health needs that require intensive treatment. And from there, I was really fortunate to do a fellowship this is where I finally learned what public health was on the fellowship. So I was already like, I'd done a lot by then, right? And then I was able to come to Hopkins and realize I started in the Department of Mental Health. There's this whole interdisciplinary group of folks, some of whom come from clinical psychology, who are committed to prevention at a population health level and really, discovered what public mental health is. So I love what I do. And I guess my take homes are, one, if you don't feel like you know where you're going, you're not alone and you will be okay. And then also that there is, I think, a real potential to have an impact through these upstream population approaches. And this is just the most fabulous place with the most fabulous people to do that work. So wishing you all the best in your journeys.
Thanks so much, Tamar. I'm going to invite Dr. Linnea Zimmerman to come up and say hello.
And my little stopwatch. We've been given 5 minutes. So I am Linnea Zimmerman. I came to Hopkins in 2009 as a PhD student, so far the record. Sat where many of you are sitting. It was not as nice then, so thank you, DrPH. And I came here with a real passion, a real idealistic view that, you know, women can do anything, women can be anything, but key to that is deciding when or if to have children. And so for me, that was very much this idea of the research that I wanted to pursue was in contraceptive programs. And I had, before coming here, I had been living in Rwanda, just like Sally, did not know Sally, but similar overlap, had been living in Rwanda. And so my interest was really in researching how to improve contraceptive programs for women, particularly in low resource, high fertility settings like sub-Saharan Africa. And for the past 14 years, I have been lucky enough to do that. I have worked with wonderful faculty and wonderful students, but I realized that this ideal dream that contraception is the silver bullet to opportunity is perhaps more nuanced than that in a lot of ways, which I'm not going to go into today. I think Farah highlighted a number of the systemic issues that there are. There's also the issue that traditionally the family planning community has considered contraception to be for women. And I think increasingly we're recognizing that contraception is for a variety of people, people with diverse gender identities, and we have to do better at being inclusive of the people who can benefit. There's also the issue that we're, you know, a lot of us are thinking about. I am a very privileged white woman from the US. What is my role in going to sub-Saharan Africa and working with women who I do not know? And so really struggling with this idea of two truths that can coexist. So one is that there is room for improvement in reproductive health in sub-Saharan Africa. And there's also a history and systems that are in place that are deeply problematic. And how do we hold these two truths together? And how do we improve both of these things? None of that is what I'm going to talk about, though. Those are all things I'm willing to talk about, none of which I have answers to. But the other way that I have really expanded my understanding of family planning is very personal. I might get choked up. I can tell I'm going to. So I came in 2009. I came with this idea that contraception is the key. And so I would have a child, if I was going to have a child, when it was the right time. So I finished my PhD program. Great. I got a job here. Check. Great. I met a wonderful and supportive partner. Highly recommend. I got married. So check, 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 check. All the things. Took out the IUD. Got down to the business of having a child. It's great. But it didn't work. It didn't work. So first month didn't work. Second month didn't work. And now I am a reproductive health professional. I know that after the age of 35, if you are having unprotected sex and not becoming pregnant after 6 months, you should go to a fertility specialist. I live in Maryland, where that is covered by law, by private health insurance. If you didn't know that, it is. And that's not the case in the vast majority of America. And so we went to a fertility specialist. 6 weeks later, I was diagnosed with cancer. 4 weeks later, this is where I get choked up. I was doing fine in my prep work. I did not get choked up by myself. 4 weeks later, I had a hysterectomy and had an emergency removal of my uterus and fallopian tubes. So my understanding of what family planning was flipped on its head. And I realized that there are millions of people that benefit from the use of prevention, but there are also millions of people for who becoming pregnant requires a different kind of technology and a different kind of health. And so we are very lucky, I'm happy to say, because we live in Maryland and have access to IVF, because I have a fairly lucrative position, was able to work with an agency to contract with a gestational carrier. And my husband and I are expecting a child on the last day of second term. So for those of you in my second term class, we're gonna have to work on that. And we are very lucky. And I recognize that for the vast majority of people who want to become pregnant and are not able to, they don't have a lot of the privileges that we have had. And so why I come back is to address all of these questions. Is who are we talking about when we're talking about reproductive health? What are we talking about when we're talking about family planning? It's more than prevention. That's not that that's not important, but there's two sides to that coin. And I don't have any of the answers. If I did, I would not be here. None of you would. We wouldn't have a problem. But that's why I come back every day. And that's what I'm happy to talk to any of you about and work on how we can be better at meeting the needs and goals of all people.
Very hard not to get teary-eyed at some of these, but I just really want to thank all of my colleagues for sharing such amazing and deeply personal stories. And you can see why we're all really excited to walk in the door every day or sign in online or whatever we do to engage. I'm going to invite Dr. Annie Smith to come up. Is Annie here? Yes, there you are.
As soon as I started tearing up, I knew I would be next. Hi, I'm Annie Smith. I work in adolescent sexual and reproductive health. Of course, I do research now, but I also have experience doing programming in that space locally and abroad. And I love working with folks. So I work with some of you in this room already. So if you're interested in working together, reach out. I think similar to other folks, I'm going to talk a bit about my trajectory. Going back a little earlier, I was utterly fascinated with bodies and birth as a child. I was one of those toddlers who was like constantly naked and running around the house. So we can't, our family home videos are locked away. I also had a favorite toy that I had to look up the name of today, which was Puppy Surprise. Is anyone familiar with that? It was like this alien looking dog toy that had a hard plastic head and a soft body and troll-like hair. And it had a Velcro pouch in its tummy. And when you got it, it had anywhere from 3 to 5 puppies inside. And I was just completely obsessed with ushering those puppies into the world. It was like, I brought it in every family picture. I would lay the puppies in front of my Puppy Surprise. So I was very obsessed with childbirth and really thought I wanted to be an OBGYN or a midwife pretty much my entire childhood. When I got to college, I realized that you have to go into so much debt to become a doctor or to pursue most postgraduate education. I was already going into so much debt to get a college degree. So I pursued something adjacent, which was biomedical engineering. And I really didn't like engineering that much. I wasn't the best student. And I wasn't really enjoying my academic experience. So on a whim one day, I applied to an internship at a company called Genentech. And I didn't include my GPA on my resume. And I wound up getting that internship. So I called my university. I said, I'm not coming back next term. I'm going to go work for a while, which was a paid internship. And it was there that I really realized that I needed to understand the connection between my work and the people who I was working for and trying to serve. And I was also working on a team, and Genentech was a Fortune 5 company. They had really gotten it right when it came to organizational management. And that experience just really changed my perspective. And I wound up going back to work there for several years after I graduated. But in my mid-20s, I really got that itch again. I just realized I really want to work in birthing. But I had no experience in birthing. I was an engineer at that point with 4 or 5 years of engineering experience. So I was telling a friend about this over a beer one night. And she said, this isn't really maternal health or birthing work, but I know this woman who's trying to develop a sanitary pad factory in Kenya. Can I connect you to her? And I said, sure. So my friend Susanna introduced me to two women, Megan and Lilino. Megan was an American living in Kenya for 20 years. Lilino was a Kenyan living in America for 20 years. And they had started a social enterprise in East Africa that sought to support young people's menstrual health through product development and also health education tools. And so I thought, okay, I'm ready to leave my job and join these people for 6 months, help them figure out, they'll learn some engineering stuff, I'll learn some reproductive health stuff, and then I'll become a midwife. So I stayed at Zana for 7 years. And, what I learned, it became very clear to me during my time there. I thought, what does menstruation have to do with what I want to do? And I very quickly realized menstruation is the first reproductive event in a person's life. And puberty is this huge opportunity for young people to acquaint themselves with their bodies and their hopes and dreams for the future, and to set themselves up for their, their reproductive trajectories, whatever that might look like. And so that's where I really began to fall in love with adolescent health. And so that's what I focus on today. And then I applied for my master's. I did my master's here. I applied for my PhD. I did my PhD here. I was really sure I wanted to do puberty work in, a global context. And now I work almost completely domestically. And that's another story. But I think a lot of us have talked about our shifting trajectories. Grad school is sort of what that's for. And I think a lot of us come into grad school thinking that we want one thing from it, or that we have to have a certain outcome from it. But I guess what I would love for you to leave here thinking is that it's okay to become uncertain during your time here. And that uncertainty is actually a signal of growth. So I hope you embrace that.
Thanks so much, Annie. There's so many quotable things that are coming out today. I'm like frantically taking notes. So we'll remind ourselves about these as the year goes on. So I'm going to invite Dr. Beth Marshall up.
So I got the memo about props. So I brought a prop, which is really an odd one. I'm Beth Marshall. I'm an associate scientist in PopFam and one of the associate directors at the Center for Adolescent Health. I live here in Baltimore City with my husband and 2 adolescent girls. One is a freshman in high school and one is a senior in high school. And my senior already has senioritis and is really focused not on filling out her Common App or writing her essay, but making memory boxes with her crew of friends so they can document their senior year. So I pulled out my memory book. So she's using it as like as a template. And I have this news article from my senior year of high school about a campaign that some friends and I introduced to include contraceptive education in middle schools. And it was in a really conservative county, and it was in the early 90s. And it's not that dissimilar from work that I'm doing currently 30 years later. I've been here at Hopkins for about 23 years, and I joined the Center for Adolescent Health staff because I knocked on a faculty member's door and was like, I work across the street at the hospital and I really like what you do. And I wanted to be a part of it. And before the hospital, I was teaching health in city schools and realized it wasn't like the best fit for me. So I wanted to be connected to supporting young people, and the faculty member, when she had an opening, reached out, and I joined the Center for Adolescent Health. And after I started at the center, I worked on my master's, I worked on my doctorate, all while I was working for the center. I held like every staff position you could hold at the center. I was a communications specialist. I coordinated a youth advisory board, was a research program coordinator, all before moving into a faculty role. All of the work that I did at the center and currently do like focuses on young people and the adults who work with them by connecting with the systems and agencies that are doing the work and supporting those systems and agencies with research and evaluation, right? So still engaged with young people, but a little bit removed from the sort of individual work that I felt like I was doing as a teacher. Although sometime in my like retirement plans, I think I like will find myself back in a classroom with adolescents. I'm not sure. Either that or as like a grocery store checkout person at Whole Foods, because I also really like food and talking to people about food. So the work that I've done and continue to do that I'm most proud of is work with the local school systems and health departments to implement evidence-based comprehensive sexual health education programs. We started working with Baltimore City like more than a decade ago, and we applied with BCHD and the Baltimore City school system for a grant to implement comprehensive sexual health education, and we didn't get it. It was kind of last minute put together. It was a little bit of a train wreck. And so 5 years later, when that grant opportunity came up again, I went to the commissioner of maternal and child health at the health department and was like, let us lead it. Like, you be the lead agency, but let us write, right? Let us coordinate. And they did. And so we were successful, and we're now entering our third cycle of that work together. And we've made a lot of progress. We have a really still long way to go, but it's been really enriching work and great partnerships. And through that work, we've expanded to working with the state of Maryland and sort of replicated that work in rural counties, which has a very different flavor from the work we've been doing in Baltimore City. We have a national center that focuses on translating that research into practice. And again, lots of things, lots of progress to make, but lots of work to do, but we are making progress. What I want you to take away from this is it is not in my nature to knock on someone's door. It is not in my nature to go to someone and say, let us take the lead on this. But in the instances where I've done that, they've totally shaped my career. And so I want you to like have those instances while you're here of like being brave and knocking on the door and asking for what you want, because that's how you'll shape your career. So knock on doors, knock on mine. We have tons of opportunity in projects with adolescent health. And if you're really interested in like pictures of me with really big hair from 30 years ago, I also have those in my office today.
I don't know, I'm imagining we might need to do a wall online and like show pictures of faculty from a while ago, and then we could do like a matching game. So I'll follow up with you, Beth. Rounding out for today, I'm going to invite Dr. Dana Sarnak to say hello.
Hi, everyone. The closer. All right. I'm Dana Sarnak. I'm an assistant scientist in this department. I've always been interested in sexual and reproductive health. After living abroad for a few years, I came back to NYU to get my master's. And being a grad student in New York City meant I was always looking for some extra cash. And one of these jobs that I found through school was to be an interviewer for a New York City parks project. So that summer, I sat in a children's playground all day and interviewed the parents that brought their kids there about the structures and safety and their experiences in the park. And this is my first experience in survey research. And I just remember being really interested in how the researchers were going to use this information to make changes. And it also revealed to me how much information is behind the answer to a survey question. So I'd ask a question that was meant to be answered in multiple choice, but the respondent wanted to share like a long story about who knows what. So after grad school, I got some really good experience in survey research at the Commonwealth Fund, where I worked on international surveys on healthcare policy. But after that, I decided I wanted to combine this experience and my passion for SRH. So I came to this department for my PhD in 2017. And I was particularly interested in reproductive preferences around childbearing and contraceptive use. And I was really lucky to start working with PMA even prior, I think a little bit illegally, to starting the program. And Performance Monitoring for Action is a survey organization that collects data on SRH topics in low and middle income countries. And some of the experiences that were more formative to me during my doctoral studies were during the trainings for interviewers with our country partners. And there's one story that really sticks out with me from a training in Kampala, Uganda. So in the training, we go through the questionnaire kind of line by line with the interviewers to make sure they understand the question and what we want out of it. And I think the question was trying to get at sexual activity and sexual exposure to pregnancy. So the question was, how many times have you had sex in the last week? And we were reviewing the question and all the women, all the interviewers in the room started snickering. And I was like, why? What's going on? And they said, women are never going to be able to answer that question. And I said, okay, well, let's probe a little bit. You can say, how many days in the last week did you have sex? And that'll be your average. And they were still laughing at me. And I said, what's going on? And they said, Dana, how are we going to count rounds of sex? So, yeah. What someone say? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so actually I didn't have an answer. We had to kind of go back to the drawing board on the question. I think in the end, we were just said, okay, one round or any rounds in a day equals once a day. I don't know. It wasn't a good question. What I'm trying to get at is a few things. I learned so much from these interviewers in the field. It's so important to kind of work with people in your community, and especially the surveyors. They just have so much gold information. And just this further kind of brings me back to this measurement issue of, are we measuring what we want to measure? And that's what I'm really interested in around this issue, reproductive preferences and intentions and behaviors. And I just the last thing I just want to mention is how I've seen these things change with my own personal experience. And I think this is a theme I've heard throughout today. For most of my life, I feel like my reproductive preferences and behaviors have kind of lined up in a very logical way. But since I became a mom a few years ago, my preferences and my behaviors have changed in ways that I really didn't expect. They're very dynamic. They can change on a daily basis. My preferences and my behaviors do not line up logically a lot of the time. And I think if I were to answer my own survey questions, I would probably, be giving myself as an analyst a headache. So I'm bringing these experiences to my work and thinking, how can we measure all these things better? And I think, this is just a little nod to sort of the life course approach and how these things can change, given, all the experiences that we go through over our lives. So that's it. And welcome to the department. If you want to work on any of that with me, let me know. But yeah, welcome.
Great. Well, in case you weren't already sold on the fact that we do a life course approach to health, I think you're getting it now. So huge thanks to all of my colleagues who shared today. We'll look forward to welcoming others next week. I hope you all have a great afternoon, and I'm so excited about the start of the academic year. So thanks to all online and in person for joining us.